Welcome into the latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. Your hosts, Austin Renner, Dalton Shetler with you. It is Wednesday, January 21st, episode 86. Dalton, it ended up working out because it sounds like you had your own travel issues on Monday. So we didn't have a show on Monday because I was down in Miami Gardens for the IU National Championship game in football. Dalton ended up getting hung up in Iowa City. So it worked out that we just pushed this thing back to Wednesday. And we get to talk about those great Monday games. But you're shaking your head. I know it's been a long couple of days for you. How are you, sir?
Next time somebody asks, is this heaven when they get to Iowa, say, no, it's hell. Because we were stuck there overnight because there was nobody in the air traffic control tower. So our entire trip had to be delayed and extended. We had to scramble. We were Ubering at 3:34 in the morning, 5 in the morning, to try and find different hotels for us
And
to stay
that's
at.
not close to Iowa City. That's the Cedar
No.
Rapids Airport. So it's a
Yep.
good 25, 30-minute drive that you make from the airport to Iowa City. So you guys got stranded. That's no fun, especially after a loss. Like that's I remember we had our flight delayed one time after a loss in East Lansing, and it's like, oh, you just want to be home. Everybody just wants to be home.
You're mad at the world, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but hey, we made it, and we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. So
We
there's
do.
we'll rejuvenate our spirit and
We do.
attitude.
We got to
How's that?
talk about a lot of Big Ten women's basketball. There's a lot of ways we can go with this thing, but let's start by letting you know we are part of the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Check us out there. Give us a subscribe. Hit that little bell button. Gives you a notification anytime that we go live. As we are right now, and we did have somebody drop. Look, we just got to we just got to run with it. All right. Hooperazzi, I'm with you, man. This was incredible. We had a lot of fun there Monday night.
I know it. There's a lot of people here for Big Ten women's basketball, but Austin, feel free, take a moment. You were there in Miami. Because besides, and we'll get to plenty of Big Ten women's basketball, but I don't know how you grade it against like the Miracle on Ice and some of the other the Jackie Robinson type stories. But outside of some of those like variables and aspects, I think it's the greatest story in sports.
It's truly something that I could have never believed in my wildest dreams was possible. When people say my dreams never made it this far, this is what they're talking about. Like I'm standing there, confetti's falling down, not on me up in section 329, but confetti was falling, and it's just incredible. And I can't tell you how much fun it was walking through the airport the next day. And it's just all these Hoosier fans, bleary-eyed, and we're just giving each other nods like, yep, hey, that was fun last night. Did you get any sleep? Nope. All right. But it was incredible. Had so much fun there. Wish I could have brought more people with me. There's so many people that deserve to see that in person, but it looked like Bloomington was on fire. Don't think anybody slept in this town. So yeah, really fun, but we are a women's basketball podcast, so we should probably talk about that. And there's a lot to talk about, Dalton. Let's knock it out. You mentioned the travel issues. Let's knock it out. Your Spartans lost to Iowa on Sunday night. Full disclosure, I was in the air during this during this game, so I did not watch this. Give us the lowdown. What happened here? How was Iowa able to stay undefeated in Big Ten play?
I think one of the biggest things that I learned up close in person is how unique and difficult of a matchup the Hawkeyes are with those two really good front court players and Ava Hayden and Hannah Stolke. I don't think many teams are able to find answers for some of that. Now, look, if you're joining us on the visual platform, you can see I have a Michigan State Spartan logo on the jacket. I have a bias. I'm sure everybody's got a certain bias. If I tried to detach myself from the bias, my takeaway would be that I would love to see this game again with both teams at full strength. Michigan State had 4 players in foul trouble in the first 12 minutes of the game. Iowa only had 4 team fouls. And no matter what kind of make good, it felt like maybe a little bit after that, you couldn't get back to what the game could have been at full strength with Grace Van Sluten playing handcuffed. That being said, Iowa deserved the win. I mean, they played great. I do think we would have been able to learn a lot more had this game been not taken away from us, just as a neutral fan of Big Ten basketball. I think that's the best way to put it. I still think Iowa very well could have won that game and may have won that game, and good on them. And I think for good reason too. I mean, we're going to get to some of the individual awards later on. Hannah Stolke was incredible. She hit a
Mhm.
clutch jumper late in that game when she had been struggling with her jump shot. Ava Hayden is a lot to handle, and they just got a lot of talented shooters. So I think Iowa is a really good team, but that would be my takeaway from that contest.
Yeah, it's a really big win because we had talked about it on the last show, me and Matt did, that Iowa had not beaten a team with a winning record in
Mhm.
conference play up to that point. Now, they still haven't done it away from home, which will be the next test. This past week, they got Oregon at home, they got Michigan State at home. This week, they're going to Maryland, and then they're hosting Ohio State. So it's really becoming a gauntlet here for Iowa. And Matt and I talked about that last week. Every team's going to have that like 3 week stretch where it just feels like you can't get your head above water. Like you're just
Mhm.
continually playing ranked team after ranked team. My team is in it right now. Indiana has just had a brutal start to their season. And Iowa is getting into that now. So we're going to continue to learn more. They just have a lot of different ways to win.
Yep.
But don't get confused. This is not like the Caitlin Clark Iowa team. They're not going to score 85 a
Very
game
different.
on you. They have to find ways to grind the game down, to slow it down, to play good defense, to work inside out. But we've talked about it a lot on this show. The Chit Chat Right edition has proven quite fruitful for them. Ava Hayden's growth has proven quite fruitful.
And Addie Deal as a freshman is now
Yep.
really starting to come on.
Yep.
I'll be curious to see if her minute count jumps up a little bit there. She had a career high 18 against Oregon. She came in and made a couple of really big plays against Michigan State. That's a really talented freshman.
And then you put Kylie Feuerbach on your best offensive player, and like she was terrific against Shea Chesky in our game. For Michigan State, though, Dalton, I know it's a bummer to lose games, but
Mhm.
and we'll let's do it now. I mean, we can talk about we can throw the Nebraska game in there as well. You guys won that game by 2, but just an overarching Michigan State thing that I talked about last week and wanted to get your thoughts. It just really feels like Grace Van Sluten's the star, but Rashonda Jones is the straw that stirs the drink. And I think we saw flashes of it when she was at Purdue. She was a little overwhelmed in terms of there was so much on her shoulders there in West Lafayette. And it does feel like she is the one, she is the engine that gets this Michigan State team going. And Kennedy Blair is certainly an important part of
Yep.
that as well. But I just feel like Rashonda Jones does so many really good things for Michigan State.
No, I think you're spot on. I think Michigan State, you can definitively say now, has a big three. You've got a monster inside in Grace Van Sluten, who in the last 6 games is averaging about 18 points and 8.5 rebounds. You have Kennedy Blair, who is second or third on the team. Between her and Rashonda, they're pretty close in point totals. But Kennedy's your leading rebounder and your leading assist maker as well. She's fourth in the Big Ten when it comes to assists. I mean, she creates a lot of the stuff. But what Rashonda Jones does, both sides of the ball, defensively,
Yep.
the pressure she applies. I mean, she's the reason Michigan State was able to get back into that game at Iowa City. It felt like at times with some of the pressure she was able to take. She played a little bit hurt. There, she had a collision with a couple of Hawkeyes, and she's still a little was banged up trying to play through that a little bit. But Spider's been unbelievable. Honestly, she's been the closer. She's been the go-to for this team when they've needed it. She helped close out the win against Clemson down in the Bahamas. She hit a big jumper late to survive that Rutgers game. She hit the big shots against Illinois to close it out. She made big plays against Nebraska. She had the deflection against Nebraska at the final horn to stave off the Huskers. Spider is an unbelievable two-way player. When it comes to two-way production, I think you could put her up there with some of the very, very best in this league. What she's done has been incredible. So I'm glad you actually put the spotlight on her, because a lot will go to Blair and Van Sluten, and some goes to Spider, but even more is deserved of Spider than what she gets.
Especially with no Theron Halleck, her role
Mhm.
has, I would imagine, had to be quickly increased more than they may have thought coming into the season. I want to circle back on that Nebraska game in a little bit when I I'm kind of tearing this show because I want to get into a little conversation here coming up about the top 5 teams in the Big Ten. I think Iowa and Michigan State are both a part of that. So I want to get your thoughts on where they sit in a moment. UCLA is certainly at the top of that. We know that. They just wanted to make sure we knew that by beating Maryland 97-67. It feels like we have gone to last year again, Dalton, where UCLA is just going to be like, yeah, we'll see you guys in March. Like we're just going to win. They
Maybe even
feel
April.
they feel maybe in April. They feel inevitable.
Yeah.
And I know we said this same thing probably on January 21st last season, and then they lost twice to USC in the month of February. I think the last one was early March, but I just USC's not getting them. I think we know that. Their trip to Michigan is the one you circle. They've already gone to Ohio State, beaten Ohio State. At the time, we were like, wow, that was really close. And now it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Ohio State's playing great basketball right now. It's the last time Ohio State's lost a game. But that trip to Michigan, where they're going to have to play Michigan and Michigan State back to back, is kind of that last like big gasp, I think, on this season because they've beaten Ohio State, they've beaten Maryland. Iowa comes to UCLA. I just don't see them losing at home to anybody in this conference right now. So they just have this sense of inevitability. And you just read through the box score of this game, and I mean, it's remarkable what they do. Jaquez, 22 points. Ledger Walker, 17 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. Neepkins, 16 points. Dugalich, 12 points. Betts, 11 points. They shot 63% from the floor. And Dalton, Maryland had 24 rebounds in this entire game. 10 defensive rebounds. That's it. Wow. In an entire 40-minute basketball game, Maryland grabbed 10 rebounds. I mean, you just don't.
That's almost got to be a record.
Ever. It's mind-boggling what they can do to you. Like, that's a good Maryland team. That's not like a team that's about to miss March Madness. Like, that's a team that's going to be potentially a second weekend team. And I'm flabbergasted by what they are able to make good teams look like by doing things like that. It's just you shouldn't be able to do that to a team. Maryland had 10 defensive rebounds, 14 offensive rebounds. They were outscored in the paint 48-24. And there you go. I mean, you're not going to win a lot of games when you get out rebounded 46-24.
I was going to say, this is a comment that only an outsider of UCLA can make. Nobody in the program or building would ever say this, but the biggest piece of adversity the Bruins had was this offseason when we thought everything was caving with the transfer portal. Yep. When Janiah Barker left, when London Jones went across town, Z headed to Bloomington, and you thought, oh no, what? And that quickly was overcame with Gianna Neepkins and everything else, bringing back Angela Dugalich. I mean, they're so good. Now, I will say, Austin, I think we had been waiting a little bit to see if UCLA would reach its potential. I don't think it had shown that early on, but a win like this is a statement of UCLA is quickly getting back to its potential, and it has such a talent advantage over everybody else in this league. If UCLA plays like this, they're playing near their potential. I mean, they're a good deal ahead of everybody, the rest of the pack, and that puts them up with some of the very best in the country. When you're talking about UConn, South Carolina, Texas, I mean, UCLA is firmly in that group to compete for it all.
No doubt. And Maryland, I think, is in an interesting spot. Again, they're going to be in that conversation for top 5 in the league, but they're struggling, and I don't think it's fair. I mean, look, it's fair because the injured players aren't coming back. So we do have to evaluate them as who they are right now. It's just a bummer of a break for Maryland fans who they get Yarden Garzone, they get Aluji Okanawa, they get this very talented freshman class, and you feel like all the pieces are coming together for a big Brenda Freeze run on the, I believe, 20th anniversary or 20th anniversary, I believe, of the national championship team. It just felt like something was going to be magical this year for Maryland, and they're not a bad team. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament, but man, this team with Schmeichel and McDaniel, like, and some of those other, Bartelme is one that we're going to forget about she was off to a great start. It was only 4 games in, but from people I talked to when I was in College Park, it was like she had such an incredible grasp of the system so quickly as a freshman, and she was going to be a star. And they lost her 4 games into the year. So it's a bummer for Maryland, but this is the team that you have to evaluate if you're the selection committee, if you're us, very important top 5 rankings that we put together, obviously the cream of the crop. So you do have to take these things into account, but a bummer to see this Maryland team hit as hard as it's been by injuries. Everybody has them. I understand that, but 4 out for the year. Every time you look at those availability reports, you're like, oh man, that's a tough one. So they drop it. UCLA wins. They stay undefeated. So Iowa and UCLA remain unbeaten in conference play. This was not a conference game, but this was as impressive of a win as we've seen in a while here for any Big Ten team. Ohio State goes to Newark and wins 71-69 over the 9th-ranked TCU Horned Frogs. And this was, first off, an incredible 4-team summation here that we got, culmination, whatever you want to call it, with 4 teams. The AP poll came out like midway through this game. 4 top 12 teams in the country playing in the Coretta Scott King Classic, which is awesome. It was great to see. Great. I didn't get to watch a ton of this because I was doing Miami Garden things at this point in my day, but I was keeping up with the scores, and this one just seemed to be a tussle the entire way through. Chance Gray, look, we were a little hard on her last year because she was so good in non-conference play. And then the Big Ten, she struggled to hit threes and just kind of became like a 29% 3-point shooter in Big Ten play. And if she's going to give you 6 3-pointers, that's giant. And she did that against TCU. They're getting really good production right now out of Elsa Lemula, who I was really high on last season. I thought she gave them great minutes, and she's really playing well. How about her last 2 games? 19 points, almost 5 assists a game, 7 blocks, and she's shooting about 70% from the floor. So they're undersized, yes, but if you get that type of production out of Elsa Lemula, that's huge. And then you're just going to keep getting good stuff out of Jelani Cambridge, who did not have her best game shooting the basketball in this one, Dalton. She was 7 of 22. But here's the big thing that stood out to me for Jelani Cambridge, who averages over 3 turnovers a game, 8 assists, 0 turnovers in this game.
Wow.
That's going to win you a lot of games when your star player is doing that on a day where she's 7 of 22 from the floor. She's becoming quickly in the conversation, realistically, Dalton, for player of the year in this conference, the way she's playing right now.
No, I think that's completely fair. And I think it's really interesting because before the season, like, remember we were trying to put together all Big Ten
Yep.
teams before the season, and I looked at you and I said, this is impossible to pick. And the 11th member for me was Jelani Cambridge. And I feel like a fool. Not even so much that like the players I picked aren't deserving, but Jelani Cambridge is breaking through that. And you're right. Like, I mean, she's making a point to be a top 3 player for player of the year conversation,
Yeah.
maybe even to the very front of that. She's
Yep.
averaging 22 points a game, averaging what, 5.5 rebounds a game? Yeah, 5.5 boards. She leads the Buckeyes with assists. I mean, you talked about her efficiency, and that's one of the things about Ohio State. I get a little bit of this from where I am in East Lansing and hanging out with head coach Robin Fraley, because I'd say besides Ohio State, the other team that plays a similar style in this
Mm-hmm.
league is Michigan State. And times where you bring up the size disadvantages, as you said, Ohio State's undersized, sure, but Robin Fralick will say, yeah, but if you've got speed, you can beat it. Like, speed
Yep.
can kill. And Ohio State is showing you that they're killing it in Columbus, and it starts with Cambridge.
I can't remember. I think I made this point with Matt on Monday, so I wanted to run it by you. And I'm going to see Ohio State tomorrow. I think that the Cody McMahon departure has unlocked Jelani Cambridge
Hmm.
because she's
I
a
agree.
high usage player. She needs the ball in her hands. And I think with Cody McMahon, she demanded the ball a lot as well. And so I think at times Jelani would press when she got her opportunities. She wasn't able to get into as much of a flow as maybe she is now. I'm still workshopping this. I don't know if that's like an apples to like, okay, perfect. Cody's gone. Now it's Jelani and boom. That there's probably a lot of, she's a sophomore now. She's got a lot more experience. I do think that's a factor, though. I think that that was two chefs in the kitchen that both needed to be top chef, and now Jelani gets to be that person, and it's really working out for Ohio State. Let's do it right now, impromptu, Dalton. If you had to, who are the top three candidates in this league right now for Player of the Year? I'm just here's the UCLA and the Michigan situations right now. They're too balanced. Like Lauren Betts is probably still in this conversation because of name, but to be honest, she's averaging 16 and 8.5. That's not bad. It's not Player of the Year, though, I don't think. It's
Yeah.
just so balanced at UCLA. I don't know if you can give it to one of them. Michigan, it's Silas Swords, it's Olivia Olson. It's kind of the two of them becoming a two-headed monster, and where they both kind of do it. Olivia Olson's averaging the most, just a hair under 18 points a game. But like Jelani's got to be in that conversation right now. There's almost no doubt about that. Iowa, like Ava Heiden's your leading scorer, but she's not Player of the Year. Hannah Stolke's not Player of the Year. It's
Right.
a weird open race right now. I think we all thought it was closed and shut before the season began that Lauren Betts was the Player of the Year in this conference, and she may prove that over the next month or so and win the award. But I think as of January 21st, it is wide open.
No, and I think that's fair. And I think Cambridge is then becomes in that conversation. The one thing I have in mind is it feels like with women's basketball, we constantly are rewarding team success. I mean,
Yep.
if you go back over the years, your Big Ten Coach of the Year, it feels like almost every single year without failure is whoever won the regular season championship,
Mm-hmm.
right or wrong, whatever. But it feels like if we have a UCLA team that is either 17-1 or 18-0 at the end of the season, it's going to have to be a Bruin. And if it's a Bruin, it's probably Lauren Betts.
Probably.
I'm
Yep.
guessing because then you also factor in the what 2.5 blocks a game and
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
she kind of flips the game on that side. But
She,
I'm with you.
yep.
The stat production isn't as egregiously large and just ridiculous like it was last year for Lauren. But that's the logic I have in my head because I think there's been other times where a Player of the Year candidate outside of Caitlin Clark uh, could have been from a team now from the regular season champ or whatever. And I feel like that's how that typically gets
Yeah.
rewarded.
I think you're right. I think trying to take that out of the equation, but even then, I am factoring in because think about the teams I just named. I
Hmm.
named UCLA, Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa. Those are your top four teams in the league. It does feel like it's got to come from one of them.
Yeah.
Like to me, Britt Prince is having an outstanding season for Nebraska. It's not going to be Player of the Year because they're sitting under 500 in the conference right now. But like Jelani Cambridge, if they continue to roll, like remember, and this is what Matt and I said last week, they've already played UCLA.
Yep.
So everyone who hasn't played UCLA, you almost like put this like imaginary extra loss in the loss column.
Yeah.
Ohio State's already done that, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like last year, remember when we were like, well, Illinois is up toward the top, but they haven't gone to LA yet. And now it's not USC's more beatable this year than years past. But if UCLA is still on your schedule and Ohio State's right there with you, like you got to feel like crap. We got to like that's an extra. We need Ohio State to fall somewhere. And now Ohio State still has to play Maryland again. They still have to play Michigan State. They still have to play
Yep.
Iowa. They still got to play a lot of these teams. Michigan. So Ohio State certainly hasn't faced its gauntlet yet, but they have already played UCLA, played them respectable, and they sit here, got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. 6 wins in a row, including this one over TCU, is really, really impressive. Let's put a bow on what I think are the top 5 teams in the league. You've got Michigan, I think, is in this conversation as well.
Hmm.
This was one that I turned on at the start of the second quarter and was like, oh, okay. I think they were up 16 already or something like that. It was quick. Now Illinois played very tight the rest of the way, but never was able to really chisel into the lead that Michigan had created. It was 27-13 at the end of the first quarter. And Illinois, again, only lost the rest of the game by 2 points, but that first quarter counts. And it kind of felt like a deer in the headlights moment for this young, new Illinois team on the road against the top 10 ranked team in the country. Like, oh, okay, well, we got to figure out how to play this. And, but Shauna Green has said, just got to keep throwing them in the fire. Like, got to keep testing them. It's the best way they're going to grow. But Michigan was impressive in this one. And then, again, I didn't get to catch much of this, but this was a valiant. It kind of felt like the UConn game again for Michigan. I checked at one point, they were down 15. I checked again, they're down 10, and here they come. They had a couple of looks at the end of this game. The ball in the hands of their stars. Olsen had a three-pointer to take the lead with 6 seconds left. Sword missed a three at the buzzer, and they lose by 3. But again, it feels a little bit like the UConn thing where it's like, well, give them a hat tip for battling back, and it's a good team. It's an undefeated Vanderbilt team. It's not a bad loss. It's like, man, that would have gone a long way for Michigan to really assure themselves. And it's something I think you and I want to talk about here as we talk about the top 5 and kind of where we have teams situated. What's Michigan's best win right now? Is it Notre Dame? Is it Illinois? Is it Oregon on the road? Like, there's not a ton on there right now, top tier. Now, they're going to have their opportunities. Michigan State's still on their schedule twice. Maryland's on their schedule. Ohio State's on their schedule. UCLA's on their schedule. They're going to get opportunities. Iowa as well. But right now, are we overinflating Michigan because of what our eyes showed us against UConn compared to what their actual resume shows us?
And I think it's a fair rationale. I mean, look, again, back to the bias. There's a Spartan Head logo on my jacket.
Yeah, I might have to head this conversation.
Yeah, that might be the healthiest for everybody. I think there could be a degree to that in all fairness. And the only I wouldn't say you would put so much stock into it. This I feel like is the most healthy way to put this. But we're having these conversations of, okay, UCLA is number 1 far and away, right? Spoiler alert for when we get to our top 5, UCLA is going to be our top for both of us because that is what it is. And it probably should be for everybody at this point. But 2 through, I believe, 6, we can have a conversation. You could talk me any which way with any of these teams. In the spirit of hair splitting, I think then you really to take into account what you're talking about. Maybe the over fluctuation, the oversaturation of maybe the close loss to UConn. I don't think it's nothing. But I think we're just trying to use tools to figure out, okay, we got these teams 2 through 6, and I don't know what the difference is. I actually don't know who is better. Maybe this is a straw man thing I can grab. And actually we're going ahead and
I figured I'd just throw it up there because we're talking about it.
Go for it. Why don't you run through?
Well, this is why I wanted to start with these teams at the top of the show, because I think it paints the picture. We've talked about all of what I think both you and I agree are the top teams in this league: UCLA, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa, Ohio State. Those are the 6, I think, in some order, we both consider the top 6 teams in the league.
You mentioned Maryland, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And now it looks like we both have Maryland at 6. Here's my top 5. No movement in my top 3. I've got UCLA 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3. To me, I get it. I get that. I get the argument of like, well, Michigan doesn't really have a great win. I'm just not going to punish them yet. I don't know. I think it's like eye test and gut test for me of like, I still believe that like these guards for Michigan are elite. And they're going to win some games because of those guards. And so I think my eye test is more so than anything else, like leading the way there. Ohio State hangs in at 3. I had a long talk to myself about 2 and 3. Iowa's right there nipping at their toes at 4. They're up a spot in my ranking. They flip with Michigan State, who they beat head to head on Sunday night. So Michigan State drops 1 for me. Dalton's is very different. For those of you listening and not watching, Dalton goes UCLA 1, Ohio State up 1 spot to number 2. Iowa jumps back into his top 5 at number 3, which might have been a miscommunication between Dalton and I on our last top 5 on whether or not he wanted them in the top 5 or not. We'll let that be up to cellular mishaps. Michigan State up 1 spot to 4, and then Michigan drops from 2 to 5 with the loss to Vanderbilt. So Dalton, we were kind of talking about the Michigan side of things, that maybe they're not quite there yet. Important to note that it's January 21st. Like, Michigan's going to have opportunities coming up to jump right back into this conversation. But talk through your top 5 and why you have everybody in their spots.
I was going to say, I'll quickly do the framework of, again, folks, we're hair splitting. You can tell me Michigan's 2, and I would say, okay. Like, I think we're very much on an even playing field 2 through 6. That's just my belief. So in trying to navigate this a little bit, Ohio State, and by the way, too, the other part of this contextually, I haven't changed my rankings much really for a while, besides for the lack of actually getting back to you last week to put Iowa in the top 5. I mean, for the most part, these have been pretty standstill, and I feel like we're at a point now where things are a little bit different. To me, Ohio State has earned their way into this. They only have 2 losses this year. It's UConn and UCLA. They've got wins over West Virginia. They beat Maryland. They beat a top 10 TCU team. There's a lot of really good signature stuff for the Buckeyes. And so I wanted to reward that and put that at number 2. Much along the lines of rewarding, I'm not so sure Iowa is 3 in the Big Ten right now, but they are undefeated in the league. I think at this point, if they're going to be knocked away from that, that will prove itself, especially as they hit the road here in this Big Ten schedule. We'll see how that plays, but I'm just simply rewarding an unbeaten conference start for the Hawkeyes to put them at 3. And in Michigan State, Michigan is close. I went with the signature wins route for Michigan State of a number 15 Ole Miss team. Both teams have beaten Illinois. Michigan State just beat Nebraska. The Spartans survived that Pacific Northwest trip where Michigan stubbed their toe. That's a hard trip. I don't think it's fair for that to be end all be all. So if you are a Wolverine fan watching this, and maybe you just don't like me to begin with, and I understand that completely, but I'm not necessarily saying that this is a hard set thing. I feel very fluid. I think you could shake these around any which way you want. That's just the logic I grabbed for this week, and that might feel inconsistent, but I don't really have a better way to do this, Austin, because I don't know in terms of rankings evaluations since we've been doing this, if I've had a class that I felt so similar about as I currently do our 2 through 6. Maryland is dropping to UCLA by 30. I mean, that to me was enough to drop the door on them to put them at 6 outside the top 5. But otherwise, I mean, I could shuffle these groups around any which way, but that is the rationale I used.
And I think that's totally fair. I mean, I'm just like, in my head, I'm trying to apply transitive properties to all this stuff, and it's absolutely impossible. Like, you think about, like, Ohio State beat Illinois by 9 on the road. Michigan beat Illinois by 16, but it was at home. Michigan State beat Illinois at home by what? 4, 5, something like that?
Yeah,
6?
it was a little bit more.
Did
Yeah,
it stretch at the end? Yeah. So it's in that, all very similar. You've got, like, Ohio State has the win at Maryland, which looks pretty good. Michigan State has the win over Nebraska, which is solid. They swept the West. There's so much, like, there's going to be, it's impossible in this league with everybody only playing one time to truly have that, because yes, you can do the transitive property, but, like, again, does Ohio State winning at Illinois mean more than Michigan State and Michigan beating Illinois at home? Like, that's the kind of stuff that might matter.
It also misses a bit of context, which we're going to naturally have with an 18-team league trying to keep up with everything, right? And like Michigan State's end of the Illinois one is Grace Van Sluten was hurt at halftime and didn't come back, and that's when the Illini came back.
Yep.
And I think every team, I don't think this is specific to a Michigan State thing. My point is, I think every group has some adversity like that, that if you're really looking for the absolute answer, would need to be applied. I think it's also hard to keep up with all that context in an 18-team league where they're playing all the time.
Well, Carol points it out very well here in the chat. They're going to play twice. Michigan State and Michigan are. So that's, well, it could sort itself out, Carol, or they just split. And then we're all scratching our heads going, well, what do we do now?
Like last year, they each won the road game. It was
I know,
super bizarre.
Bizarre. So, especially in the way that it happened, too. But We could certainly talk about this till our hair grows gray, which is not far away from happening.
I think it
But
already has.
uh, another, we were talking about Maryland. I do want to mention Maryland did get a win in the LA swing. They won at USC 62-55. So again, like, are they a top five team? To me, I don't think so anymore. But this is still a good basketball team, and they still went on the road. And you think about Maryland, Dalton, you think about, okay, they're going to try and score 85. They're going to try and get up and run and up and down the floor. Showing that they could win 62-55 on the road against a really good defensive team like USC, that showed me something about Brenda Friese's group. It's like they're adaptable. They can find another way to win a basketball game. It was not pretty. It was not the most aesthetically pleasing game that you're going to watch. But winning on the road matters. Addie Mack put up 12 in this game. She continues to play pretty well for them in her freshman season. They're getting good production out of Izzy Mamadou, 10 points, 9 rebounds for her. They didn't shoot the ball well in this game. They turned the ball over a ton, and yet they still find a way to win a basketball game on the road against a good team. And to that, you tip your cap to Maryland because, look, we've already talked about it. They're going through a lot with injuries. They've had to shuffle things around. People they thought they were getting back are no longer coming back. You got to make soup out of the ingredients you've got, and Brenda Friese is doing that right now. And I know the back half of the trip was not what they wanted on national TV, getting blown out the way they did. But this was a sneaky good win that I think will go a long way for Maryland, showing they can win another way.
No, I think you're spot on, and I think really if there was to be anything on the tombstone of Maryland women's basketball, it would be that. They're just to be remembered as the group that finds ways to adapt all the time, no matter what. And that's been kind of Brenda Frese the last few years, right? How many injuries, how many pieces of adversity have we seen? They still find ways to get answers. You're right. The UCLA game, hopefully for Maryland's sake, it just comes up to be kind of a miscue, a mishap, and
Yeah.
kind of a blip in the radar. But overall, they do find ways. USC is no slouch, and for Maryland to still find a way, minus all the talent they're missing. I mean, tip of the cap to Brenda Frese. If Maryland comes into that top 5 conversation by season's end, Austin, look, I know it's almost ipso de facto. We hand the Coach of the Year award to whoever wins the regular season, but Brenda Frese would be in the
Yeah.
conversation for me, and maybe even where my vote would go. I don't necessarily play by everybody's rules when it comes to Coach of the Year, so
No,
I might
no.
go outside the lines.
I think we both voted for Corey Close last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah.
And she did not win it. So yeah, we don't always vote correctly. Like Dalton, he left Jelani Cambridge off his pre. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm
I
just
feel like an
messing.
idiot. I feel like an idiot.
We should
I
pull
I
up our ballots at some point in
oh,
the next couple weeks and just laugh at ourselves. It's
I
some of the
hated when I
misses
did
we
it.
had.
Yeah,
Um,
that
uh, so we talked about the top 6. I think we both agree Maryland is there, but not quite in that top 5 right now.
yeah.
I do. The head scratcher was the Purdue game, but I do believe Washington is more toward that 6th spot than they are toward the bottom. I think Washington is at the top of the next group. This is a team that it was funny. They always say like the unstoppable the unstoppable force moves the I'm terrible at these. Wow.
Unstoppable and the immovable.
Yeah,
Unstoppable
whatever
force,
that. Yeah.
immovable object.
They fight whenever they match up. It's like, oh, this is going to be great. Well, this was the unstoppable against or the immovable against the immovable. Like these are two teams that were like, we're not going to let you score, and so it's just like this like fundamentally defensive showdown. Like which team is going to execute the best, and it's fascinating. It's like when you watch like Minnesota and Illinois play. Like you just know that Shauna Green and Don White's teams are going to be tough. They're going to be fundamental. They're going to execute. They're not going to beat themselves. And that's kind of what we saw in this game. And in the second half, Washington kind of wore down Minnesota. They hit more shots, found a way to win this game going away. Minnesota had the early lead, but Washington went on a big run. And I've been impressed, Dalton. You can lose a game and it can spiral in this conference.
Mhm.
And look, I know Indiana's not having the best season, but for Washington to lose at Purdue, have to be on the road for the next 3 days and have to sit there and be like, man, we just lost that game. We had a huge lead. We gave it away. And they just came out and blitzed Indiana. Like a quarter in, they're up double figures. It never got closer than 9 the rest of the way. They just blitzed Indiana. And I was really impressed with that. They looked very connected together, cohesive. Talk about a team that can beat you in a lot of different ways. Yulia Grabovskaya was awesome against Indiana. She had not really been much of an offensive threat this season. Seems to be playing with some more confidence now. I like Bryn McGoy off the bench for Washington. Their guards are terrific. It does look like Eladine is settling in a little bit more now. It is Sabia Seller's team, which
Yep.
I don't know if we thought that last year. It certainly is this year. She's definitely the engine that makes this thing run. But she wasn't even that great in the Indiana game, and others just came alongside her and pulled them with her, and they played great. Then this is a really nice win over a tournament team in Minnesota, and I think Washington is absolutely in that conversation to be, or they can beat teams. We've already seen them beat Michigan. They gave Michigan State a lot of trouble early in that game. Michigan State would eventually pull away, but they're going to get some teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is a team that is competing to be, I don't know where I find them. I think I see them as like, hey, can we make sure we're not an 8 or a 7 seed? Like, can we get
Yeah,
into a 6 seed
that feels right.
and be somebody that makes it out of the first weekend? I think that's kind of where I see it. Don't think they're a hosting school. I don't think they're a double bye in the Big Ten type of team. And one thing Matt and I talked about, then I'll let you have the floor. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but
No, all good.
Matt made a really good point about, like, are we going to see the top teams that we just highlighted there in the top 5? Are we going to see those teams separate and give the Big Ten 4 or 5 legitimate hosting schools that can make a run in the NCAA tournament? Or are we going to see, like we saw last year, where it's more of a, it comes all together and it's just a mess from 3 through 10? And
Well,
so I
and
think that's
oh, go
on
ahead.
the Michigan States and the Michigans and the Ohio States and the Iowas to not slip up. Like we said last week, Michigan slipped up against Washington, which again, that's a good Washington team.
Mhm.
Hard to call it a slip up, but they do lose that game to a team you would say is a tier below them. And this was right before the Illinois game. We said, look, you can't drop any more in that kind of food group. Like, you can't lose to Illinois, you can't lose to Nebraska, you can't lose to Oregon, which they didn't. They survived that game. But, like, can you separate yourselves and make it a definitive top 4 or 5 in the league that can all make second weekend runs? Kind of felt like there were only 2 legitimate teams that could do that last year in the Big Ten. I know that Maryland did ultimately make it to the Sweet 16, but would not be surprised if there's a little bit more separation this year.
No, and I think that's important. Actually, great minds think alike, partner. Because as you were going into it and starting to segue to it, I pulled up Charlie Cream's bracketology, and
Yeah.
as of the last one, which was
Yeah.
yesterday morning it released, he had 5 Big Ten teams hosting. He
Okay.
had, of
Those
course,
top 5 that we
UCLA.
were talking about?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
had UCLA as a 1 seed. Actually, has Maryland still as a 4 seed as of
Oh.
yesterday. So that's 2. Michigan being a 3 seed. I actually might have missed one. Maybe he's got 6 because Iowa is a 2 seed, and then Michigan State a 4 seed,
Ohio
and
State.
Ohio State a 3 seed. So
Okay.
6. 6
6.
teams as of now hosting. So
Whew.
if you kind of hold that line, I doubt you get to 6, right? Because that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost a half of the hosting would be played in Big Ten country. Just
Yeah.
the NCAA tournament follows the Big Ten Maps commercial all the way through for where all the games are going to be played. I don't know if it stays at 6, but if you get 5 teams to host, I mean, it's looking really good for the conference in March.
Yeah, and I think they can, but they've got to
Yeah,
separate themselves. It's like you
yeah.
can't lose a bunch of games to, and again, this is not a slight on these teams, but you got to take care of the Washingtons and the Illinois and the Nebraskas and the Oregons, because you got to make sure, hey, we need to, if the Big Ten wants to be at its best in March, it needs to have at least 4 teams that have a 15-3 or better record in the league, I think.
Mhm.
Maybe 14-4. But like if you're looking at Michigan State, it's like, okay, you lost at Iowa. The Wisconsin one's the head scratcher. Certainly can't do that again. But like, let's say you lose to UCLA, can you run the rest of the way and go 15-3? I know that includes what, at Maryland? No, Maryland at home.
Maryland home,
Maryland
Ohio
at
State
home,
home, and a
and Michigan
series
twice.
with Michigan.
Yeah, so that's going to be hard. But can Michigan State get to 14-4? Can Michigan, who sits with one loss right now, Ohio State, who sits with one loss, Ohio State's the interesting one because they've already lost to UCLA. Can Ohio State only lose one or two more? That's the question. Or is everybody just going to beat each other up again?
And based on some of the non-conference schedules, I think this is a factor here too, Austin. I think the Big Ten's getting a lot of credit for its work in the non-conference this year with some signature wins. I mean, of course, a few teams fell at the hands of UConn or whatever, right? Here
Yeah.
in this non-conference, but overall, like for Michigan State, you go down and you play a number 15 Ole Miss team, you win, and you went undefeated in non-conference. Nebraska undefeated in the non-conference. There's a lot of teams that did some good work. Iowa with the win over Baylor,
Yeah.
win over Iowa State. They beat Iowa State,
No,
right? Or am I
they lost at
misremembering?
Iowa
Lost to
State.
Iowa State.
Yeah.
But point overall is, aside from that mishap, you had some signature moments in the non-conference for this league as a whole. I think that's carrying some weight where I'm with you. I think a lot of programs, the goal should be to try and get to 14-4 in the Big Ten, but even a 13-5, I could see hosting here.
Yeah. Because it is kind of like you get, and I should throw USC in that bucket and Minnesota when I'm saying like, hey,
Yeah.
don't lose to this team. Right now, I've got Washington 7, Minnesota 8, Illinois 9, USC 10, Nebraska 11. It gets interesting though with this result right here. This was the game of the week. This was awesome. I was sitting there with my popcorn, my imaginary popcorn. I'm sitting in Charlotte Airport watching this game, and it was just fascinating. I mean, it was incredible theater. You've got at one point in the fourth quarter, Mia Jacobs banks in an and one 3-pointer, only to be topped by the game tying 3-pointer from Wisconsin that gets banked in at late in the fourth quarter that tied the game from Kyra Daniels. But the story of the day is Destiny Howell. She goes for 39 points, 10 3-pointers in this one. She was huge, made the game-winning free throws in double overtime. Oregon, a team that where did Charlie Cream have Oregon, Dalton? Do you still have
Yesterday,
that
he
up?
had him as a 10 seed.
Okay. This is one where you're like, shoot, that's one we probably needed to get. But there's also a conversation here, and I don't think it's NCAA tournament conversation, but like, where can Wisconsin get to? Now, I know they
Yeah.
dropped a couple to Purdue and Northwestern, which is kind of crazy that they sit with 4 wins in the Big Ten and they lost to Purdue and Northwestern. Like, think of where Wisconsin could be right now if they had taken care of it. They could be 6-2 in the league right now, which
Yeah.
is incredible.
I
And
think Austin at its ceiling. I'm with you. I don't think it's NCAA tournament, but I think they're in the bubble picture of Charlie Creams by March at their best. Like if this keeps rolling this way.
Yeah, they lost 3 games in a row there to Purdue, then at Michigan and at Northwestern. And again, those are just two where you're like, shoot, if you get those games, you're sitting there at 6-2 with losses at Maryland and at Michigan. Like, you're in a good situation. You have that win over Michigan State. They get Nebraska this week at home. That's an opportunity to beat a ranked team in the Kohl Center. You're going to get Washington at home in early February. You're going to get Minnesota at home and Iowa at home later in the season. So could Wisconsin find their way? I think there's no doubt they're a Big Ten tournament team at this
Yeah.
point. Now it's like, okay, year one for Robin Pinchton, even if it's not a Big Ten, an NCAA tournament team, there's a lot of positive momentum going on in Wisconsin. And I don't know how many of these players are like super seniors. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. Like how many of these players she brought in as like 1-year players just to kind of get this thing going quickly. But they've got a lot to build on in terms of the foundation that Robin Pinchton's building there.
Well, and I would say too for Wisconsin, it feels like certainly last year, maybe even the year before, Austin, if we took those teams from Wisconsin and you just took Sarah Williams off of the team, it could have been 0-29. Like it
Yeah.
honestly felt that bare. Like Sarah Williams did everything for Wisconsin was the feel. That doesn't mean there were not valuable pieces on that team, like Ronnie Porter, who's still there in Wisconsin doing things. But now the way that Robin Pinchton took over that squad and had Sarah Williams being gone, she went to
Mm-hmm.
UConn in the portal, and then you add in a transfer from Missouri State. You add in a transfer from Morehouse, I believe, And all of a sudden, you come out and you pick up 4 Big Ten wins. I think what Robin Pinchton has done, to your point, I don't think you use the NCAA tournament as maybe a barometer, but the fact that you're picking up Big Ten wins and you have 4 of them to date right now, given how bare the cabinet was with Sarah Williams
Yep.
being gone, I think it's one of the more incredible jobs. It doesn't have to land in any kind of postseason thing, I think, for a metric. I think that's the best way to look at it.
They've met their win total from last year in the Big Ten, 8 games into the season.
And that was
So,
with Sarah Williams.
yeah.
Like,
Now, a lot of these players are seniors. I'm looking at it now. Ronnie Porter, senior. Lily Cron, senior. Destiny Howell, senior. Gifted Cheno, senior. So they are going to have to reload again next year. But I think the foundation is important to show recruits and transfers, hey, this is what we can do in Madison. And you hope you get some more support from the athletic department as well, with Robin Pinchton going to them and saying, hey, look at what we were able to do this year. Imagine what we could do if we get a little bit more. And here we go. So good on Wisconsin for fighting up into the middle class of the Big Ten this year.
I know we still got more to hit on, so I'll quickly hit the other perspective. Oregon losing this one in double overtime. I mean, as of now, this is kind of the what if team in the Big Ten. A double overtime loss to Oregon, double overtime loss to Michigan, led the Spartans by 16, let that one get away. Oregon, as we said, a 10 seed, according to Charlie Cream of yesterday, but there's just a couple of balls bouncing the other way that they're looking at maybe a 7 or 6 seed as of yesterday's bracketology. It's kind of wild.
Dalton, they're 2-5 in the Big Ten right now. So they do need to get on their horse and start winning some games. Now they're 14-6 overall. And they've got 2 at home this week against Minnesota and Penn State. Then they go to Rutgers. So can you get 3 in a row there and maybe get to 5-5 before you play Maryland? It's a very favorable schedule coming down the stretch. They've already played UCLA. They've already played Michigan. They've already played Iowa. They've already played Michigan State. So they have some runway here. But 2-5, they got to start getting to work here. And this was a loss they probably didn't want to have.
And so many near misses. That's the so many near misses.
Let's give a shout out to Joe McEwen's squad. They beat Wisconsin last week, 66-61. That's win number 2 for Northwestern this year, which matches their total from last season's Big Ten season. We know this is Joe McEwen's last year. I said this last week. You can't not root for him and for this Northwestern team. I want to see them in Indianapolis. I understand that right now my team is probably fighting with them to be in Indianapolis, but you can't root against Joe McEwen for what he's done in his career. It'd be great to see them go out on a positive note. They play hard, and they get a lot out of Grace Sullivan. She's been great. They get a lot out of several others on this team. Just continue to give them solid. They're not gonna beat UCLA. They're probably not gonna beat the Michigans of the world, but they do kind of drag you. I was talking about this with somebody. They drag you into a fist fight, and they ask if you're ready for it, basically. And like they had Iowa in a tight game there in the fourth quarter, and they had Illinois on the road right there in this game. They got out rebounded by 15, gave up 18 offensive rebounds, and yet they still had a chance to win at Illinois. They had Ohio State in a tight game way back when. So this is a team that's going to drag you in and say, are you ready to fist fight? Because that's how we're going to play today. And you got to be ready to go when you play Northwestern. And they were able to get Wisconsin here. That's a really nice win for Northwestern. And then Rutgers gets a win. Their first of the year, as Matt so precisely said when previewing this past week's schedule. Somebody has to win this game. Rutgers did win the game. They get their first win in conference play. Another one slips away from Penn State. So when you look at the standings in the Big Ten right now, Dalton, this is where we sit. I color-coded it. Green up is in the double bye. In between the green and yellow is the single bye. In between the yellow and red is in the Big Ten tournament. And then below the red would be out of it as of right now. And you look at where, look at Wisconsin sitting there with a bye right now in the Big Ten tournament.
Crazy.
And then you look at Purdue and Northwestern. They've both won a couple of games. 2 teams that did not make the tournament last year have worked their way into the field as of right now. And then you've got Rutgers, Indiana, and Penn State. This is what I said last week, though. And Matt made a good point. It's kind of the opposite when you think about, like, last year, we were thinking there's teams that are going to have losses because they haven't played the LA schools yet. This
Mhm.
year, there's teams that are going to have wins because maybe they still have some of these other teams on there. Now, there's no guaranteed wins in the Big Ten by any means. But when you look at Indiana's schedule coming home, they still play every single team 12th and below in those standings right now. They still play USC, Oregon, Purdue twice, Northwestern, Rutgers, and Penn State. So, and then Wisconsin as well up at number 9. So there's a lot of runway for Indiana to still get out of this bottom 3. But again, Rutgers getting a win over Penn State, that could matter. Northwestern getting 2 wins at this point could matter. Purdue having 2 wins is absolutely going to matter. So it's going to be fascinating. I like that the women's game kept that line, just
Yeah.
so that there is some drama there, and I think that's fun. I know the teams want to be in Indianapolis. I get it, but it's kind of fun that there's a little drama down there when the season comes to a close. Um, let's shout out some people, Dalton. How about our 3 stars of the week? Hard not to give one to Destiny Howell. She had 39 points and a school record 10 made threes in the win over Oregon. Jelani Cambridge just keeps doing what she's doing. Had 33 against Penn State. And then Hannah Stolke with that performance at Michigan State gets a nod. 22 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists in that win. Some others that were worthy of shout outs. Sneakily having a great year is Barry Wallace right now, one of the top 5 scorers in the Big Ten. She had 27 and a half in 2 games this week for Illinois. Grace Van Sluten averaged 19 and a half this week for Michigan State, put up 22 in the win against Nebraska. Grace Sullivan keeps doing her thing, 20 points a game this week. Chance Gray hit 6 3-pointers in that win over TCU. Mia Jacobs had 30 in the loss to Wisconsin. Keomi McMillan had 27 in that loss to Rutgers. Kiki Rice, a really efficient day against Minnesota, missed 1 shot, 25 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 made threes. Charlize Ledger-Walker, she stuffed the stat sheet against Maryland, 17 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 threes in that win. Kara Dunn averaged 25 this week for USC and got 29 in their bounce back win over Purdue. So there were a lot of people that stood out this week. This league is deep. It's one of the reasons we made this podcast was because there's a lot of people that are having great seasons, and it's a wide open player of the year race, I think, right now. And it's a lot of fun to see what teams are doing here in the Big Ten. Any thoughts, Dalton, on Big Ten standings, kind of where we're at here as we approach the midway point of the Big Ten season?
No, I just think if there was a year that was tailor-made to be a fun ride for a spectator, it's this year. Because you have the resurgence of Wisconsin all of a sudden starting to pick teams off. UCLA at the very top, that part might be a little bit boring because I think we feel like it is inevitable. But beyond that, we said teams 2 through 6, we really believe is a pretty similar playing field. And honestly, teams 2 through 6 can lose to teams 7 through 15 or whatever you
Yeah,
have. I mean, how
yeah.
many wild results have we seen so far this season? How many great finishes have we seen?
Mm-hmm.
I just think this league is really in a good spot where you're talking about maybe a dozen teams in, but more importantly, as we said, half of a dozen scheduled to host as of now. And to
That's the
see
key.
how those teams survive the rest of the way, beating up on each other, that part's going to be a lot of fun.
If you're talking about best conferences, it's always between the SEC and the Big Ten. And people have said, look, the Big Ten's the deepest conference, but the
Yep.
SEC has the most top tier teams. Big Ten's trying to flip that because I know we all think UCLA can win the title. Can Michigan, can Ohio State, can Iowa, can Michigan State make a push at being a Final Four team? Maybe not this year, but maybe in years to come, we'll see. But can the Big Ten get more teams in the Sweet 16? Can the Big Ten get more teams in the Elite Eight? You just take steps forward as a league, and this feels like a year where they're going to do that. Some games this week to keep your eyes on. It starts Thursday. I believe there's games tonight. There's a whole 4 games tonight, but some big games on Thursday. We've got Iowa taking on Maryland in College Park. That's 6 o'clock on NBC Prime watching for you there. Thursday, we've got USC at Michigan State. That's at 8 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. So you're going to get the Trojans in town, who I know the record's 3-4, but it still feels like that's going to be a tough team to take. It's going to be a tough team to bury this year. Like, they're just going to keep coming back because they play such great defense. Cara Dunn's playing really good basketball right now. So that'll be a fun one in East Lansing tomorrow. Saturday, Illinois goes to Nebraska. Kind of two teams fighting there in the middle of the Big Ten Conference. Could be an important tiebreaker when season's end comes around. Sunday, we get Indiana Purdue. I know it's, and that record's wrong for Indiana. They're not 3-4. I wish that'd be nice. But I know Indiana is 0-7 right now. They play Ohio State tomorrow night, but that game still always matters. Look, I'm a Hoosier, and so Indiana Purdue is always going to matter. Anybody in this state knows the importance of that game, so wanted to throw that on there. Same with the bottom one, Wisconsin at Minnesota. That's always a game that's going to matter to those two fan bases for sure. And it's become very interesting now with Wisconsin being up there at 4-4 in the league. USC continues their double dip in the Mitten State against Michigan. But the big one, I think, is Ohio State at Iowa Sunday at 2 o'clock. That's on Peacock, by the way. It's why there's no TV designation next to that one. I have discovered if you're a YouTube TV or I think it's Comcast subscriber, you get NBCSN, which carries a lot of the Peacock games. So something to keep an eye on. I noticed that Michigan, Illinois was on NBCSN the other day when they were on Peacock. So there's the slate. Anything stand out to you? Your Spartans are on there for Thursday, but there should be a great slate of games this week.
No, and I think the Michigan State one's interesting more so because USC's trip out to the Mitten State. I think what a year to make the trip to Michigan. Look, it's not quite the same as USC UCLA last year where you go out and you have to play the two very best, but that is not an easy trip for teams to make this year with Michigan State and Michigan being what they are. So to see what USC can do in that swing, that's certainly going to be interesting from a neutral standpoint, but also Iowa's week. You
It's a
go
huge
to
week.
Maryland. Can you pick up a signature win away from Carver Hawkeye Arena? That we'll find a little bit out on Thursday. And then you have Ohio State coming to your building. Can you protect Carver Hawkeye again and get the win against the Buckeyes? I think that's pretty interesting as well. You mentioned there's games tonight. I thought the most notable ones, Minnesota and Oregon tipping at 9 o'clock Eastern time. Grab a cup of coffee. And Nebraska, Wisconsin, given our conversation about Wisconsin, that's a 7:30 tip tonight. The other ones were Purdue and UCLA.
Don't expect that one to be very close.
I don't really either. And then also Penn State, number 25, Washington. So we'll see what's there.
I mean, it's a big week for. So I think there's a couple teams. I think there's 3 teams that this is the biggest week for. I would say number 1 is Iowa. If they get through and they're still undefeated after this week, Dalton, they might jump up to number 2 in those power rankings.
I think
they're 9-0.
They do.
Yeah, I mean, you just won at Maryland and you won against Ohio State. Absolutely. I think number 2 is USC, as you mentioned. If they lose both those games, they're sitting at 3-6 in the Big Ten. And I think 12-9 overall. I think they're 12-7 right now.
They're 11-7 right now.
They'd be sitting at 11-9 overall. Like, we might start having to have some conversations about USC. And then I think the third team is Nebraska, because you go to Wisconsin and you host Illinois. This is a Nebraska team that we thought at one point had a chance to play into a hosting position. I don't think that's a situation anymore, but can you kind of elevate yourself? You don't want to lose at Wisconsin. You don't want to lose at home. But if they do, they're still under 500 at the halfway point in league play. So this is a Nebraska team that I think we're high on. It's still no Natalie Potts. I haven't heard any news on whether or not she's just not coming back, but they don't list her as out for the season on the availability reports.
I believe, actually, because they had made the trip to East Lansing,
you just saw a little
bit. Starting to become more included in things like shoot-arounds and everything else. So starting to make her way back.
Okay. Well,
Had not
good. And
practiced yet, I believe at that point is if I remember correctly the conversation, but
I don't know,
starting to get back involved.
the question will be how additive can she be when she comes back is the question. But I think it's a big week for Nebraska because you don't want. I mean, they have a chance to get to 5-4 and start to really create some momentum for themselves in the Big Ten. But they're both like it's both tricky games. You got to go to the Kohl Center where Wisconsin's playing some good basketball right now, and then you get Illinois at home, and then after that next week they get Northwestern at home before an absolute gauntlet of at Ohio State, at Michigan. So can they get to 6-4 in this league and really cement themselves as an NCAA tournament team? And I think they're in that bucket with Washington and Illinois, who are trying to make sure they are not a 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. Can you get off that 8-9 line? Can you get away from a 1 seed? Give yourself a better chance to make it through the first round and the second round of the NCAA tournament. That's where I think Nebraska and Illinois find themselves as well as Washington.
Yeah, and the thing I wanted to point out here too, because you mentioned if USC drops to Michigan and Michigan State this week and they move to 3-6, how wildly different is it from when the Trojans had to win against NC State in the first or second week of the season? And we had an entirely different idea. Now, USC, I still think they're fine, but if they drop both of those games, we did not foresee this after that
No.
close win against the Wolfpack. I mean, that's a wildly different outlook on the Trojans from where this started.
Even when they beat Washington back in the opener of the Big Ten season, we were like, all right,
True.
this is still probably a top 5 team in the league. They're 10th right now in my power rankings. Now, take that with whatever you want to take it. We've talked about how close everybody is, but they're searching right now, and it's a league where if you're caught searching, you can go on long losing streaks. Like if you are not ready, you are not on your game, you can fall. And guess what they get when they return home, Dalton, after these 2 Michigan games? They get the Hawkeyes in the Galen Center. So that's their next 3 games. So
Oh,
they need to figure it out. Now they do have a stretch of 5 straight against unranked teams after that. So they will have opportunities to right the ship, but momentum's a real thing, and you can go into a spiral. And even if there's some favorable games on the other side of said spiral, can you pick yourself back up and win those games? So I think this is a big weekend or big week for USC. That was a big episode for us. Hour and 7 minutes, Dalton.
I know it was long, and so I real quick because I had 2 other
No, keep
nuggets
going. Let's
pieces.
let's
Yeah,
let's keep it rolling. I don't
well,
have a
I
flight for another 2 hours, so we're good. We're good.
forgive me, but did last week you and Matt touch on Purdue's Madison Layden Zay breaking the
Yes.
3-point record in Purdue? Okay,
Yep.
good. I wanted to make sure that got mentioned somewhere because it's an incredible achievement.
Absolutely.
Michigan State before the loss to Iowa had started 17-1. That was the greatest start
Yep.
in 53
Touched
years of
on that
Spartan women's
too.
basketball history. So
I
want to
had
make sure
to
we got
because
those.
Matt Park had no
He
interest in,
refused.
in touching on that. We did have to start the show with the Spartans because they had who'd you guys just beat at that point? You'd beaten Illinois and
And then probably the Washington, Oregon sweep. I
yes, it was
actually
that's what
all
it
I got to
was.
saw was the very beginning when Matt was very much groaning about Ohio State, Michigan State, and it tickled me
Yes.
a little bit. We
That's
put Matt and
that's
I on at the same time, and then this really turns into first take. We just start yelling over the
oh,
top of each other. That's
I don't want to be in the middle of that. That sounds terrible. Goodness gracious. I got to sit there as you two just yell at each other about Michigan. You know what? I'll just go grab, I think the CFP trophy is going to be at Kroger today. So I'll just go and try and steal that. And then I'll just hold that up in the middle of you two arguing
while
about
we
your
go at each
score.
other.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. There's a lot of good stuff going on in the Big Ten. Like you said, that's certainly worth mentioning. It's going to be, I don't know if it's like the headliner kind of week, but it's going to be a week where we just continue to get more data points and we
Yep.
continue to learn, and either we get more clarity or we're just even more confused than we were the previous week. We'll plan on going back to Monday episodes next Monday. This one was I don't think the Hoosiers are playing for a national title next Monday, so I think we're good. That's done. We don't have to. I think I lost years on my life in those stands in Hard Rock. I told my buddy that I was there with. I said, "Can you check my hair? Is it gray yet?" Like I was so stressed for 60 game minutes, so about 3.5 hours just to being a stress ball. But you know what? Those are the
All worth
wins
it.
that are so satisfying when you get them, though. Like, it's fun to kick butt like Indiana did the first 2 rounds, but boy, it is satisfying when you have that, like, incredible. I mean, just grown men are just hugging. I was hugging anybody who was around me after the interception. Like, it was just pandemonium.
Just hugging a bunch of different random guys and singing Fernando in their ears. Yeah,
That's right.
it's quite the scene in
That's
Miami.
correct. I love that we all sang Fernando after the game. That was great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And hopefully one of our Big Ten teams will be feeling that type of fun when April rolls around. UCLA seems like the favorite, but as we know with March Madness, you never know. So thanks so much for spending some of your Monday with us. If you watched us live, we really appreciate it. If you're listening to us, give us a download, a rating on Apple or Spotify. All that stuff helps us out. And make sure to subscribe to the Back Home Network YouTube channel for all of our latest content there. And follow us on X as well, Dribble Drive WBB. Keep up to date on everything happening Big Ten women's basketball. For Dalton Shetler, I'm Austin Render. So long from episode 86 of the Dribble Drive.